Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, just showed us what it's like growing up in the wasteland. But long before that, back in 1979, we already saw the world before the fall in a movie called Mad Max. Well, it might be more accurate to call it during the fall, because while society and government are still present, they are clearly on their last legs. The setting is Australia, and the period, according to the movie, is a few years from now. Max Rokitansky, played by Mel Gibson, is an officer in the Maine Force Patrol, a specialized group attempting to retake the transcontinental highways from marauding motorcycle gangs. The movie is light on details for the exact state of the world, but you can feel it. Governments are losing control, gangs are taking over, things are desolate, and society is on the brink of collapse. Just look at the halls of justice where the MFP is headquartered. It screams post-apocalypse. The exact how and why the world got this way is filled in more by later movies and the Fury Road tie-in comic, all detailed in my timeline video. That almost but not quite apocalyptic setting is part of what makes the movie so special and memorable, but funny enough, that wasn't always the plan. It was originally set in contemporary Melbourne, and Max was going to be a journalist, desensitized and brutalized by his coverage of crime stories. The movie would answer the question, what if some of that violence happened to you? But director George Miller and his producing partner Byron Kennedy decided the story would make more sense if Max was a cop. And still, the story didn't quite work, especially with some of the insanity and carnage they hoped to convey. That's when they decided to set it in the future, where the exaggerated events would be more plausible. Now, given their limited budget for their first feature film, they couldn't set it too far in the future, and that's how A Few Years From Now was born. Setting this movie in the future gave them all sorts of creative freedom. In his interview with Fantastic Films magazine in 1982, Kennedy mentioned how the future setting let them redesign the cop outfits and cars to their liking. It also helped to set the film apart from the many other car-focused films at the time. If you want to know more of the behind the scenes, check out the Madness of Max documentary. But the origins of the near-apocalyptic setting is something I wanted to highlight because looking back, I think it was crucial to the enduring success of the series. Anyway, this movie was made for about $350,000 and went on to gross $100 million. In terms of box office to budget, that's a record which wouldn't be broken until 1999 with the Blair Witch Project. So this must be a pretty special movie, right? Well, let's give it a watch and see for ourselves. Full spoilers ahead for 1979's Mad Max. But first, a quick word from our sponsor. Picture this. There's a new movie out which you're super hyped for. You finish work, meet your friends at the theater, only to find out this theater isn't showing that movie. It is showing in the next town over, but they won't let you in because you're not from their town. That doesn't seem fair, but it's exactly the same with Netflix. You see, they have a huge catalog, but you can only watch a fraction of it because they offer different shows and movies depending on the country you're in. That's where private internet access comes in. As a VPN, they let you overcome these restrictions by giving you the option to change your IP address to one of 91 countries they offer. For example, with Alien Romulus coming out from director Fede Alvarez, I wanted to re-watch the last big franchise movie he made, 2013's Evil Dead remake, but it isn't on Netflix until I changed my IP location to the UK, and now it's there. In addition to changing your location, PIA also helps protect your personal data by encrypting your internet connection through a world-class server infrastructure, which makes your information shielded and bulletproof. Something you want, especially when you're on a public Wi-Fi network. By using my link in the description, piavpn.com/onetake, you can get 83% off on private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely free. For only $2, you can unlock so much content and protect your digital life. Now, let's get back to the video. A few years from now, society is in a free fall toward collapse. But in Australia, out of a last gasp of the dying system, the main Force Patrol is born, a specialized police force dispatched to restore order on the transcontinental highways, to take on the burgeoning gangs and marauders. Among those officers is Max Rockatansky, and he is one of their best. When gangsters elude the MFP, leading a trail of property damage and bodies, Max is the one who stops it cold. Crawford the Knight Rider Montezano is even reduced to tears when he meets him in a highway duel, and of course it ends with the Knight Rider dead. Policing for the MFP is the sort of job that could drive someone mad. Max, however, has someone at home who anchors him to sanity. Two someones, actually. His wife Jessie and their baby boy Sprague. Still, he is thinking of quitting the road, so his superior spends a great deal assembling a V8 Interceptor, hoping to seduce him with the prospect of driving the beast. People don't believe in heroes anymore. With Max, MFP Captain Fifi McAfee intends to give them one. And as with all heroes, Max has his enemies. Even more after Knight Rider's death. Word is out Max is the one who killed him, and Knight Rider's gang is out for revenge. In the meantime, that gang continues to do what they do best, leading one of those trails of chaos and destruction. Max and his partner Jim Goose are witness to some of their handiwork when they find a terrorized young couple and their torn-apart car. And they find Johnny the Boy, a member of the gang who was involved in the crime. But his arrest is of little consolation. It's at the run-down halls of justice where Goose hears the news. No one showed up to testify. The gang, through fear and intimidation, has usurped the law, and Johnny is free to go. Goose loses it and manages to get in one punch before Max and the others stop him. The next day, Goose pays for that. The gang sabotages his motorbike, sending him off-road. He moves to a pickup truck, and they crash it, too. Once he's trapped in the upturned vehicle leaking gasoline, he meets the one in charge of the gang, Toe Cutter. But it's Johnny the Boy who throws the match. He doesn't want to, but Toe Cutter is insistent. Goose miraculously survives the flames, but when Max finds his charred partner breathing through a machine at the hospital, Max's eyes show what he feels, the thing that will come to define him: madness. That night it haunts his dreams, but in the morning, when Jessie finds him restless, she helps to clear his head of it, and finally, Max turns it in. His resignation letter. Captain Fifi asks him why, and Max admits the truth. He's starting to enjoy it out there on the road too much, and if it goes any longer, the only thing separating him from these psychotic gangsters will be the bronze badge on his chest. The captain gives him a few weeks off to think it over in case he changes his mind. Max enjoys the quality time with his family, and in a rare moment of quiet, takes the opportunity to tell his wife just how he feels about her, as though he may never get the chance again. It's not long after that when it almost happens. She takes their son for ice cream, catching the eyes of some nearby troublemakers. She fights off their assault. Kundalini even loses a hand when he chains it to her truck before she takes off. Jessie gets back to Max and they make their escape, unaware those troublemakers are Toe Cutter's gang, and they quietly follow the Rockatansky family all the way to their destination on the coast, and that's where they make their attack. Max gets separated from his family, and by the time he catches up with them, Toe Cutter and the rest are already speeding off, with Max's wife and son left on the road behind them. She is hospitalized with traumatic injuries that she's unlikely to survive. Their son, dead on arrival. And as for Max, he gives in to the thing which has been tugging at him: madness. He returns to the Halls of Justice garage and leaves in the V8 Interceptor. He finds a few of the gang on the road and drives through them, twice. The message to Toe Cutter is made clear when the gang lord finds a couple of photos in his helmet left by Max, one of Jessie and Sprague, and one of Goose. It's a simple message: the road warrior is coming for you. So Toe Cutter sets a trap. An abandoned motorcycle on the side of the road catches Max's attention. He gets out of the interceptor before taking a bullet through his leg, and when he reaches for his gun, they run over his arm with one of those motorcycles. But when Bubba tries the same trick again, Max gets a hold of his gun first and shoots him off the bike. Toe Cutter and Johnny the Boy drive off, and Max, with only one arm and leg still functional, drags himself back to the car. He chases Toe Cutter into the path of a semi. Max dodges it by turning off-road, while Toe Cutter gets chewed up underneath the truck. Max continues driving through the night, only stopping the next day when he finds Johnny the Boy stealing the boots of a dead man on the side of the road. He ignores Johnny's pleas that this isn't what it looks like. He just found the man. But Max does notice the gas leaking from the upturned truck. Max cuffs Johnny's ankle to it, while the gangster lets out a series of excuses. He's psychotic. He has personality disorder. He isn't a bad man. Max is not distracted while he does his work, and only when he's finished does he explain what he's done. The lighter has been lit and arranged so the gas will reach it soon, but Johnny does have a chance to live. Max tosses him a hacksaw and explains,
"The chain in those handcuffs is high tensile steel. It'll take you 10 minutes to hack through it with this. Now, if you're lucky, you can hack through your ankle in 5 minutes."
Max leaves him and drives off down the road. There's an explosion behind him. He keeps driving, wandering out into the wasteland. I've seen this movie many times, but to this day, I still find it so effective. The story itself isn't all that unique, but the movie has a few ingredients that make it special. I already talked about the not quite apocalyptic setting. Beyond that, there's also a strange tone, which strikes a balance between dark comedy, sometimes bordering on outright goofiness, and deadly serious when appropriate. A lot of that is encapsulated in the opening sequence. There's some humor in two officers squabbling over which one of them gets to drive, but in the chase with Knight Rider, things take a more serious tone. They crash, and as a result, one of the officers gets their throat cut. There are also those two moments when Knight Rider and then later on Toe Cutter are killed. Right before their deaths, there are blink-and-you'll-miss-it shots of their eyes almost popping out of their heads, like when a cartoon character is surprised by something. The moments are absurd, but the latter especially takes place during an intense sequence. Like I said though, the movie is also serious when it needs to be. For any of the tension in the movie to work, Max's relationship with his wife and his friendship with Goose need to feel real, and both are established with expert efficiency. Later in the movie, after Goose's near death, Max can't wrap his head around the person he saw in the hospital. He tells Jesse that Goose was so full of living, he ran the franchise on it. That first line is a little bit of a cliche, but adding he ran the franchise on it somehow punctuates it in a really effective way. But of course, it isn't enough to throw a few adjectives on someone. We need to see who they are. And from the moment we meet him, it's obvious that Goose loves life. During the Knight Rider chase, he gets knocked over and breaks a leg, but he takes it in good humor.
Oh my God, what's happening? I don't know, man. I just got to hear myself.
He's an immediately likable character, even more so after you see how much he cares about those who are hurt by the gangs they're going after. He's patient and calming with the girl traumatized by Toe Cutter's gang, and flies into a rage when he finds out that no one is paying for that crime. In terms of his friendship with Max, the day after Goose breaks his leg, this interaction tells you everything. Max is enjoying an apple before the workday starts, and when Jim shows up, of course he has an extra to share. You get the feeling it's a routine where Max often feeds his friend, and then like kids playing with their food, they don't just eat it right away, but do the classic hold the apple by your teeth thing. Small details like that go a long way in establishing a close friendship, more than an expositional statement like, "Goose, we've known each other for what, 5 years? I'd take a bullet for you, you know that. And hey, we gotta look out for each other out there on the Fury Road." Max's wife Jessie is a good-humored musician, and such a contrast to the rest of the film. Our introduction to this world is a violent chase on a desolate highway. Cut to a quiet suburban home and a loving family. She and Sprague feel like the last dim light of a dying world. She's slightly grumpy when Max has to leave early for work, but doesn't let him go without first, in her own charming way, telling him how she feels. She makes a few hand gestures, then tells Max that it's sign language for crazy about you. something Max signs back later in the movie before things go the way they go. The little hint of discord between them, sewed up by the end of the scene, is another one of those small details that breathes life into their relationship. It's warm and optimistic, but not idealized in a cartoonish way. With all that character work done, the tried and true formula works. Put characters that we care about in danger to make the action truly gripping. I feel that action scenes have a combination of elements that make them less or more effective. There are the stakes. How much do you care about the outcome of the scene, and to what extent is that outcome truly in doubt? There's creativity. How much do they show you something you haven't seen before? And there's spectacle. That's where CGI often goes awry. If it doesn't feel real, none of it feels all that impressive. Well, on that last point, of course we aren't seeing CGI in this movie, so all the stunts feel that much more impressive. There's some creativity too, the way Max leads Toe Cutter into the path of that truck, or even little things like using this big stick to get onto a truck to steal fuel. It makes me think of what's to come in Fury Road. And I would say the creativity, as allowed by a bigger budget, goes further and further as the series goes along. When it comes to stakes, which when they're effective can make up for deficiencies in creativity or spectacle, Mad Max definitely does the job. Not only do I find myself hoping for these characters to live, but the tension of watching Jesse and Goose fight for their lives lasts a while, and that's a balancing act. Basically, the longer you can keep the fight going without the audience getting bored or restless, the longer they'll feel that tension. Think about the sequence with Goose. The night before, Johnny the boy sabotages his motorcycle. It's Alfred Hitchcock's theory of suspense, that if you know there's a bomb under the table before it goes off, that creates suspense, as opposed to only a moment of surprise if a bomb suddenly goes off out of nowhere. Now, the next morning when Goose gets on that bike, Miller knows exactly what we're feeling, and he plays with it. The camera takes its time to show us every step of the process as he starts up the bike and speeds off, because he knows we're watching to see when exactly things will go wrong. It locks up at high speed and sends him flying, but he isn't dead yet. As Jim Goose himself says, "Don't write off the goose until you see the box going into the hole." He calls in some help, gets a pickup truck, and he's back on the road, until Johnny the boy strikes again. But he still isn't dead. Then, the argument between Johnny and Toe Cutter, finally the match hits the fuel and Goose burns. The whole sequence is drawn out, and we feel tense the entire time, and it all leads to an important moment for Max himself. I talked a bunch about the other characters, but something else which elevates this movie is that Max isn't mad from the start. From the outside, this movie has the look of an exploitation film, but the main character here isn't one-dimensional and he isn't an action hero. The truth is that he's good at what he does, but he's worried that he's starting to enjoy it too much. He says it himself, but importantly, we see it too. Look how excited he is at the prospect of driving the Interceptor, the last of the V8s. When he sees Goose at the hospital, there's a sort of shimmer effect on screen which cuts to a wide-eyed Max. This is him taking a step toward madness. If he gets pushed too far, we know he'll snap and join the gangs, not as an ally, but as a warrior no different from them, living to fight in the wasteland and nothing more. This adds another dimension to the threat posed by Toe Cutter. He isn't just there to kill everyone Max cares about. He's also there to degrade him, to tear away his humanity. Like Goose, Jessie also has a prolonged battle for her and Sprague's lives. There's her first run-in with Toe Cutter at the ice cream parlor, where she proves formidable. They escape, and once they're on the coast, another attack. She gets home, and there's a moment of comfort before she remembers to go back for Sprague. And now, the gang has him. She begs for his life. Their friend May, an elderly woman with a gun, comes to the rescue and they escape again. Contrast is another tool at Miller's disposal. If we feel something at the same intensity for too long, we become numb to it. That's why we talk about emotional roller coasters. There have to be ups and downs, like the moment of calm before the alarm. They have Sprague. May and Jessie get as far as they can, but her car breaks down and the whole gang is after them. She runs with Sprague, but of course, There's no way they could possibly run fast or far enough. It's tragic, it's infuriating, and you want to see Max kill every last one of them. Sure, we've all heard the warning about revenge. It will not bring back the ones you love. Sure, fine, but those responsible have to die regardless. It's satisfying watching Max drive through them. It's satisfying to see Toe Cutter, who throughout the movie is so arrogant, shaken when he sees those pictures. When Bubba draws things out, having fun torturing Max instead of just killing him, Toe Cutter tells him to quit toying, because he knows they went too far and they are going to pay for it.
Quit toying, Bubba!
But what's truly brilliant about this final revenge is that they don't save Toe Cutter for last. They save Johnny the boy. See, he's not anywhere close to innocent, but it's also clear he is abused and manipulated by Toe Cutter. He refused to burn Goose, and it's unclear if he even threw the match, or Toe Cutter knocked it out of his hand. It gives me the feeling, at least, that perhaps Johnny, if the world hadn't fallen, might have stayed closer to the straight and narrow, but in a world run by gangs, he turned to Toe Cutter, or maybe Toe Cutter found him and filled him with murderous hate. This, by the way, is a theme that carries all the way into Fury Road. The way Johnny wants to impress Toe Cutter echoes in the War Boys who are willing to die for Immortan Joe, who, by the way, is also played by Hugh Byrne, who plays Toe Cutter here. There's also some hint that Johnny, to some extent, has the mind of a child. At least as a coping mechanism, he reverts to a sort of childish state. When Toe Cutter tells him to burn Goose, he starts babbling about how silly Goose looks upside down like that.
Look at him. Looks silly, doesn't he, upside down?
And of all the people Max killed, Johnny is the one who gets the most tortured death. He isn't gone in an instant, but instead gets that awful cut off your foot for a chance at living or die in the explosion choice. Gibson's performance here, the unhinged way he delivers those lines, telling Johnny exactly what he's done and the choice he has, is so effective. This scene had such an impact, by the way. James Wan and Lee Wan-el credit this scene for inspiring the entire Saw franchise. But there is that thing which undercuts the satisfaction of revenge. Max is becoming what he feared, someone who enjoys it a little too much out here on the Fury Road. But without Jesse or Sprague, why not give in? And as he drives off, we see the eyes, not of Max Rockatansky, but of Mad Max, the Road Warrior. Now, I've talked about the serious character work in this movie, but I mentioned earlier that the movie isn't all serious. It is at the right moments, but that leaves room for some fun elsewhere, and I have to call out Hugh Byrne specifically. As Toe Cutter, he is so memorable and charming in a sadistic sort of way. He talks like he's performing Shakespeare.
That is his name, the Night Rider. Remember him when you look at the night sky.
And his whole gang has a manic energy. The way they burst into town with such gleeful mayhem, they remind me a lot of that scene in Tim Burton's Batman when Joker's gang defaces the Gotham Museum while jamming to Prince. Byrne especially gives a fun performance, but that hectic energy in such a violent world is also terrifying. They are an unpredictable force of nature, and you do not want to be anywhere near them. Of course, that's the flip side to the action formula. Yes, you have to care about whoever is in the crosshairs, but also the more terrified you are of the ones chasing them, the better. So Toe Cutter and his gleeful band of maniacs holding Max and Jesse's infant son is about as bad as it can get. When I first saw this movie, I was probably a little too young, and honestly, I didn't really get it. After all the hype, I thought, that's it? It's just another revenge movie. But revisiting it years later, I was able to appreciate it a lot more. And now, I love this movie. Everything from the near-apocalyptic setting to the emotional stakes and the unexpectedly poignant character arc. This wasn't just get angry, take revenge, and try to move on. This was someone trading their humanity for revenge and giving in to madness. Anyway, I think we can wrap it up there. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next One Take.